All right, let's get started. Oh, you know what? I, well, let's get started. I, okay. First of all, welcome everybody. It's been a week. It was a good week. This week is a holiday week in the US. We had Thanksgiving on Thursday, and then Friday we were off. So I've been off for the past few days. I had family in town until Saturday, yesterday. So, um, I was doing stuff with them and didn't do a whole lot outside of just hanging out with family. Um, so that's where we were this week. Um, and now I'm back and looking to get into things. Um, I think this issue we're seeing here is it. I've run into this before. I think it has something to do with the way editors interpret signal store. I don't think this is actually an issue. Um, because if it was, it would stop our compilation, and that's not happening right now. Anyway, we finished up last time. Where were we last time? I think we actually just finished up last time with the game one stuff, the grid errors in the game one. Um, hey, Michael. No, we actually have. Um, so these all have generics in them. Oh, this one does not. Interesting. Does that fix it? It doesn't. It's interesting that it's not telling me that this feature needs a generic on it. Like this one has a generic on it. We can put a generic on this one. It doesn't matter. And we're supposed to, so that it can go in any order. But this one is even complaining about with state with grid computed has a generic on it, but it's also saying that it. See, I'm not sure what's causing this because yeah, it's a weird one, and I don't know what causes this. I've seen it in the past, but it doesn't stop compilation, which is the interesting thing about it, right? Like game one has the stuff on it, manage selected has the stuff on it, puzzle mode. So I'm not sure. Um, I haven't even fired up VS Code in a while. Let's see. I have seen this error in both VS Code and in WebStorm. So if I just do code insiders dot here, we'll just open up grid store. Not finding my grid store. It's in libs components lib grid store. So if we go to libs components lib grid Stores. Good store. It is not an issue. Well, it's still loading. And I haven't updated the Angular compiler, so it may not understand it, but no, it doesn't look like it's a VS Code issue. Um, so it probably is. You have, really. We'll give it a shot today and see what happens. Um, because this one I've seen before, and I'm not that concerned about it. I probably should be, to be frank, but let's take a look at what we've got left, right? We've got our solver left. I believe is pretty much the only thing we've got left. I think we've taken care of the cell value changed. I think everything outside of the store I've just been leaving. I'm fairly certain we've taken care of this, but I'm never certain every time. So, um, create puzzle cell. I believe this one is done. Um, Set puzzle create mode. I believe this is done. Reset grid. I think we didn't have this one. I think we were on reset grid because for reset grid to finish, we had to do check grid for win. So here, if we go look at with grid, let's add it in first, right? So we'll just add with methods, put some state in here. Boom. Import this. And this is, we just want our reset grid. Right, and all we're doing is we're just creating a grid state and we're just putting it into the grid. And we're calling update grid with that. So if we just do state dot update grid, update grid. Do I not have an update grid in it? What is in my with grid? Can I not do with state, with methods? There's an update grid method there. This is update cell value. But I think what we can do is I don't think this belongs here anyway. I actually think it belongs in the grid feature after all of this stuff here. So we can just add our stuff here And we can say that we want to patch our state. And our state will take in the grid, and we will update grid with create grid state, the one we want. We'll import this. What does update grid take? Expected 3 to 5. Oh, we need state.grid on this. Wait, I don't even need the update grid. Why am I doing that? That was a function we were using before. This just allows us to update a specific row and column. But really, we can just say, hey, we just want to create a new grid state. And that should be fine. Now if we look at the old store, then we check it for win, and we set the command stack to nothing. To do setting the command stack, that's an interesting one. That means reset grid needs to run after the undo redo and after this. So it probably doesn't belong where I'm sticking it now. So instead, we can come back to the grid store. We can add our stuff in again. Here's our state. We've got our methods. Then the next thing we want to do is we just want to do state.update game1 to false. And then state dot is there a reset command? We do look at undo redo. Undo redo has current command stack length. There's a set command stack. Clear old commands. With methods, undo, redo. Let's just add one last one here after redo. We're just going to call this reset. And reset is just going to say state dot set command stack to nothing. And if I set the command stack to nothing, does that handle everything? Yeah. That does handle everything. So that's what we want. So now we can just do state dot reset. No, I didn't name it properly. Let's go back. So let's call this reset command stack. And now we can just call state dot reset command stack. The other thing I think I should probably do with that one is let's mark it internal to the state. It's not what I wanted. Where's my undo read? There it is, right there. We'll just mark this internal to the store. And that way we won't be tempted to run it from someplace outside of the store. So we reset the command stack. So we put in a new grid. We do all of that. So let's add a new feature for this, right? Um, so we're gonna go into our store. We're going to add a new TypeScript file. And I think what could be causing this is we might be getting close to the limit of the number of items that can be added. Um, so the name of the file will be reset.feature. So now we can just grab this, pull that out. Well, actually, we can't do that yet. So we want to export function with reset. Yeah, we want that. And do you want a signal store feature? We do want this. We do want the grid state. I don't know that these methods make sense. We'll have to add some more. And actually, it copied most of my stuff over from the other one. So reset grid, grab patch state, and we need to grab create grid state. Update game one, we need methods for these. So we can say, hey, we need methods. So we need update game one and reset command stack. Perfect. Which means we can delete this and we can replace it with reset. And go ahead and import that. So there we go. So what is our reset feature? It's just new. It's not complaining about anything. So yeah, we've got that. Like I'm looking at the it's interesting that these signals it's complaining about, but this is a deeps. I don't know what it's complaining about. Let's be honest. I'm guessing. But anyway, we've got our reset in here. Let's go ahead and commit that. Yeah, we can commit that to our grid store. So we added ability to reset grid. Hey, Marcus, good to see you, man. You've been busy, very, very busy. It's good to see you. Marcus has been speaking quite a bit. He's just been out there doing a ton of stuff lately. It's just good to see him. Yeah. He's been speaking at a couple of different Angular conferences and things. And should definitely follow him on Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff. He's out there doing some amazing stuff. But it's good to see you. I'm not sure about that. He's always so modest. That's what I love about Marcus. Okay, so we've got reset in here. We've got our pencil marks. Let's go back to the old store. And this is where we need to figure out like the solvers. Um, we got unwind bad decision, set invalid values, navigate to cell. This is keyboard navigation stuff. Update next to focus, update selected from navigation. This is our navigate cell, get cell values to hide. I think this is pencil mark stuff. Find next to the focus. And these are actually outside of the, I was a little bit confused here, but these are actually outside, okay, of the actual class. So we could work two ways. We could work on the solver or the keyboard navigation. I think we'll work on the solver because that's what's next in line. And then the keyboard navigation, and then we should be done. So let's take a look at solve one cell. It's in effect, but we aren't really using effects here. And really, it just takes in an empty observable so that we don't even need this. We do need the command stack invalid values. So we'll need to figure out what that is. So we're adding invalid values to the current pipe. So this is really just a computed. So we're getting the grid, we're getting the command stack. We can do this inside of a method with the state. And then we're doing a map to solve one cell with the grid. And we're grabbing that cell state. Okay, we can do this. So first thing we'll do is we'll just copy this over into our grid. Actually, we'll just move it into our new grid store. So we're going to add our with methods. And we need our state for sure. We'll go ahead and grab our with methods from ngrx signals. Perfect. And then we're going to paste this in. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet. So solve one cell doesn't need to be an observable anymore. So one thing we can do is actually let's comment this out. Okay, so we'll have our solve one cell. Solve one cell. And nope, it's just going to be a function. So whenever you call this function, we're going to grab a couple of things. The first thing we need is the grid and then the invalid values. So we can say const grid state.grid. Um, but we need the invalid values from the command stack. And I think we should pull that off of the undo redo feature. Do we have computed in here? Sweet. So what we can do is we can do, we can just add command stack, um, invalid values. That will be computed. And I'm debating going with like a linked signal here. But if we look at the invalid values, if we go back here, where are my invalid values? So it's based on the current command. And we're just grabbing the invalid values off of the current command. So this can't be in this one. We can set it up after it. So we can just add another with computed here. Throw our state in it. And inside of here, we can paste our command stack invalid values. And actually, we can just say this is our current command invalid values. And so our computed we'll take, actually, it's easy. It's just state dot current command dot invalid. Oh, we don't have invalid values on it. And I actually want to change this up just a little bit, because I've found sometimes that if I'm a little bit more explicit about the way I access my current command, or yeah, that's what I'm looking for here. So if I'm a little bit more explicit about how I access the signal, because I think current command, it does return a grid command. If it could return null or undefined, then it might be more of an issue. And I do see what you're saying, like Michael, where WebStorm's having trouble understanding this. But this should give us the current command invalid values. So then we can also go here and we can say, hey, we also want invalid values equals that. And I think I made it an underscore, right? Current command invalid value. Oh, I only did command invalid values. And it's always weird to me that you can have a space here and it doesn't care. So that takes care of this line. But now we want to change. We're not using, so we grab the grid. We solve for the grid, but We're not using the command stack invalid values that I can see. Like, I'm not sure why we're grabbing this because our very next map gets rid of it, right? Because we're discarding the click observable, right? And then our with latest from is grabbing the grid and the invalid values, but we're only using the grid, and then we're solving one cell on that grid. So I don't know why we're grabbing that. Let's go take a look at solve one cell. Where is solve one cell coming from? That's coming from wave function collapse. We expand this out so you guys can see it. It's returning in a random array item with the least amount of entropy. And the random array item that isn't even solving the cell. That one's actually renamed wrong. So it's grabbing just a cell state, and then it's calling find next value on that cell state. Um, so I don't know that we need this. Let me comment this one out and also go here to the undo redo feature, and we'll comment this out, and we'll take it out if we don't need it. But if we do need it, we can just easily, undo the commenting. So solve one cell is improperly named. Um, because we're actually doing the find next value here. And then we're unwinding a bad decision. Where does find next value come from? Find next value. So interesting. So find next value is actually coming from here in the old store. And we're using column values, row values, and region values. We can pass in the invalid values, but we aren't using it. Are we using it here? So here we're updating the command stack. I think invalid values were supposed to do something different. Oh, unwind bad decision uses invalid values. Okay, we'll have to take a look at that one. Um, but for now, we're not using invalid values at all. Um, this is definitely not solve one cell. We're not solving a cell at all. Um, we're finding a cell to solve. Um, so like all of this logic here should exist in the solver. So that's bad. But I don't feel like cleaning that up right now. Because I want to get to the xState stuff, and I actually want to look at like some Angular 19 stuff here soon. So let's just port the code as is, right? So we want to say const next cell to solve equals, and we're going to use the inappropriate named function. So there's our solve one cell. And then once we've got that, we look at the cell state, right? So if there is a cell state, then we do some stuff. And if that stuff doesn't work, we unwind it, and then we call cell value changed. Okay. So we just say, hey, if there is a next cell to solve, I get like it's a little bit frustrating that Copilot can get so aggressive here. So if there is a next value to solve, then we're going to find the next value. Let's find next value. And find next value is using next cell to solve. Boom. So we need to bring over the find next value function. So we'll go ahead and grab that also. And I've stopped using const functions as much anymore. Instead, I've just started calling them function. And part of that comes down to personal preference, but part of that comes down to there has been some issues that I've had in the past. With const functions and the way it does this captures and things like that. There's been some issues with that, and so I've gone back to just using just regular functions. In the past, using const versus function mattered a little bit more because our like named functions mattered, right? And things like that, but it's not as big of a deal anymore. So here we're just going to also say, hey, if the value doesn't, and it's nice that Copilot recognized I need to comment that until I've got it. And otherwise, we're just going to update our state. Cell value changed. I think. Do we not have cell value changed? So that is in the grid component. Grid component, button host cell, grid component. So the old store has a cell value changed, but I believe we changed that to be just see what we find if we go for cell updated. No. State dot so cell updated. What is this one? Expected 2 arguments but got 1. What does cell updated expect? Can you give me some information on it? That is not where I wanted to go. Cell updated. It's just row and column. Oh, wait, this is row, column, and value? Oh, that's me. I was like, wait, no, this one does what I want. Um, I think I want update cell value. I think that's the one I want. So update cell value. Yeah, that works. So that's pretty much everything except for we need to move in the unwind bad decision. So let's go find, oh, it's still complaining about this. Okay. So we need to look at unwind bad decision. And that's going to grab the current command. So we're going to be using this one in our current with methods. So we'll just add another with methods here and another state. And boom. So let's go ahead and comment all of this out. And we'll work through our unwind bad decision, right? So the first thing we want to do is this is just going to have a method called unwind bad decision. And again, this was an avoid observable, so we don't need to really do anything with it. But if we look, we need the current command in the grid. So we can just, yeah, grid equals state dot grid. Right, and then, yep, we can grab the current command. I think it's an underscore. So now we've got the grid and the current command. So we've got that. We are calling unwinding and giving it the information. So for right now, we'll just log unwinding. It's going to log the grid and it's going to log the last command using the log observable function. And so here we can see that we're using the last command and we're using the grid. So we're going to grab the current cell state. So that's fine. And then invalid values come off of the last command dot value. So then we return the last command dot invalid values or just the last command. Okay. Interesting. So the invalid values are either the last command or the invalid values from the last command. But we're saying if there was no last command dot value, so if we didn't enter a value previously, this only works because Sudoku only allows the values 1 through 9. I think this is fine. I wonder why I went this far. Let's just try it without it, right? I think it's to prevent me from entering a whole bunch of empties, maybe. Um, we'll leave it how it is for now. So again, we're logging some stuff out to help us. So we'll grab that. So the next value is we're going to find the next value, but we're going to pass it the invalid values. So, hey, MP Skeeter, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Definitely, join us in the chat, hang out, ask questions if you've got questions. Michael is an expert nerd sniper. Chow, if he ever joins, is an expert nerd sniper. Marcus is an expert nerd sniper. So don't feel like your questions have to be on topic. If you want to send me off in a weird direction, go for it. I'm happy to answer any Angular questions you guys might have. So we find the next value, then we call undo. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So we grab the next value, then we call undo on the state because we want to undo what we just did, which is going to get rid of the last command. And so that's why we grab the next value and the invalid values off of the last command first. And And then we look, we see if the next value is null. If the next value is null, we unwind the bad decision again. Um, this is an interesting turn of events, and it's one that we're going to modify our function. Because if we want to call ourselves recursively, we can't do that with the way we're written right now. Very interesting. So what we can do is instead, we can say, hey, we've got this, and we just want to return unwind bad decision. And so that's what we're going to return. But now we need to make unwind bad decision a function, right? So now we do function unwind bad decision, and we need our closing brace here. And now we can call ourselves, right? So we're recursively calling ourselves here. One thing we might want to do is have a max depth on this. Because if you recursively call yourself, it's possible to exhaust the stack, right? Because what happens when you recursively call yourself in JavaScript is the current function is pushed onto the stack as a pointer, and then the new call is added to this call stack also, right? And then we go through, and then if we hit this again, we're pushed onto the stack as a pointer, and then we're added to the stack again, and then, right, we just keep pushing ourselves onto the stack. And the reason that recursion will exhaust the stack in JavaScript is the stack can only be so big, right? And the reason that it pushes itself onto the stack is that when you call unwind bad decision, eventually it's going to return, right? We haven't returned yet from this function, and that's why it has to push us onto the call stack. But eventually it will return, and then it will walk back through, right, every failed decision, and it will return, right? So all of these that get pushed on are just returned. And it has to do that because, like, if you write a recursive Fibonacci, right, there might be more logic that runs. It doesn't know that you can just return. And there are ways to optimize, like tail recursion is what this is called, where you create a long tail of calling yourself over and over again. And there are ways to optimize tail call recursions, but JavaScript doesn't do it. So that's why I'm thinking about potentially adding like a max recursion depth, right? As we walk backwards, but I would need to do some calculations on what would be a sane value for that. Like I'm trying to see if maybe 81 is a safe value, but I don't know. I don't know. It would be interesting to analyze a Sudoku game and see how many of these tail calls are possible. And, you know, in a bad case where it just can't solve the puzzle, what happens, right? But anyway, so we've unwound a bad decision, and then we return. from inside of our own code. So we've done that. So that's interesting. We, after the recursive call, I must have been concerned about it. But there's our cell state after the recursive call. And then we update the cell value. And then we call this set invalid values for new command. So here we can just do update cell value, and that's fine. And then this set invalid values for new command. Let's go find that here. So set invalid values for new command takes the grid state. It takes the invalid values that we've got. And it just sets, okay, that's fine. So this can actually go up on this with methods. Or wait, no, this is our first one. I've got a bug in here somewhere. Wait, how does that? Oh, that's the function where that one matches up. What does that match up with? That matches up with that. Why doesn't it like this comma? Expected an expression. Oh, yeah, that's true. Right. So the with methods, boom. Oh, but this is our with methods down here. This is in the wrong place. No, it's not. That is definitely not in the wrong place. Now everything should be okay. My with methods here, that matches that. Do I not need that? There we go. All right. Sometimes doing this stuff can get a little bit difficult to figure out where parens and everything need to go, but we're in a good place here. I'm trying to decide because we've already got this function here. So the old store relies on the set invalid values for command, which takes in the grid state and the invalid values, which are an array of cell values. Let's just, we'll add another with methods before it. So we've got, we'll have 3 with methods on this. Do I care about that? I don't really care. I do this all the time. So with methods, state, and we're going to create another method here. So we're going to comment this out. Oh, pardon me. So here we're just going to add set invalid values for new command. And that works. So inside of here, we really only care about the final invalid values. I don't even need the state because I can grab that. So we can just console.log final invalid values. And then we can just say state.current command.invalid values equals that. Actually, that doesn't work. I can't do that because I want the state to know that it's been updated. So we need to use a patch state, right? So we're going to have to patch state with our state. And we're going to need to set the well, that's an interesting one. That's a very interesting one. But I think we can do better than mapping over the entire command stack. So what we could do here is we could just say, hey, let's grab our command stack. And that's our command stack. And then we can say, hey, const. Is that really something that is on there? Current command. It is. It very much is. Now we can set the command stack with our current. So then we could even just go state.set command stack with our current command stack. And that should work. And we don't need this anymore. So we're grabbing the command stack, we're mutating it. And then we're setting the command stack again. That should work. So we can get rid of this. So now we can just say, hey, state.set invalid values for new command with our new invalid values. And that takes care of all of our unwind bad decisions here. That also means that we don't need the invalid values that we had and we were recalculating. We can uncomment our unwind bad decisions, and it's not this, it's now state dot unwind bad decisions. So we've got that. So that all looks good. And then in our undo redo feature, we can also pull this out that we copied, but we don't really need. Hey, TBD Gamer, it's good to see you, man. Welcome to the stream. I'm getting close to the end, but it's good to see you. Uh, Actually, I'm not close to the end. I'm way off. I've got an hour. Um, thanks. I'm definitely not close to the end. So yeah, I believe we've got all of the solver code in place. And I remember working through a bunch of this code. What bothers me is that I never moved a lot of this code to unwind and do that kind of stuff um, into the solver itself. We may have to remedy that when we get over to xState. I just heard a big old burp come out of the kitchen. And when you live with three girls, that doesn't happen very often. So kind of cracking me up. So we can now move this into our own feature, into the grid, the grid solver feature. And then from there, all we've got left is the arrow keys. So I think we can finish up the arrow keys today. That should go pretty quick. And then we can try running this and see how much I've broken. So I think there's going to be a bit of, why did I do that? But we'll see. Okay, so in our store, we want a new TypeScript file, and we can call this our solve. We'll call it our solver.feature. So here's our solver, and we can export function with solver. And let's take a look at what it gave me. Grid. You know what, for now, we're just going to return signal store feature. And in our signal store feature, the first thing we want is our type. And we definitely need our state to be a grid state, because we're working with the grid. And then from here, we can grab a lot of our stuff, right? So we can grab our with methods, grab all of this stuff. So this really winds up being 3 with methods. I think some of this stuff could wind up being like linked signals and things like that. But we need to do some investigation, right? And then the other thing that we can grab is the find next value. Boom. And our solver feature can have all of this down here. And I'm intentionally not exporting these functions because I don't want to test these functions. I want my test to test the actual command itself, right? So here we can add our with solver and import that. And right now it doesn't work because solver requires a couple of things. So we need the command stack and the last command run index. And if we go take a look at these, right? So in our undo redo, our current command stack length. So command stack actually comes from the state. So what we want to do is on our state, we're going to say that it's a grid state, and actually that's not what we wanted to do. Let's try it a different way, right? Grid state, and it's going to have, um, whoops, it's going to have a command stack on it. And the type of command stack is going to be the same one from the undo redo feature. So command stack is null because why wouldn't it be? Let's go take a look at grid command stack. So command stack is just an array of grid commands. That's what we'll do. Right. So there we go. And we can import that. There might be, actually, we can just say, hey, it's a grid command stack. That'll solve a lot of our problems. So we don't have to go through and create this over and over again. So we'll just use grid command stack. So that solves that problem. But we're still missing set command stack. And that is part of functions or methods, not functions, methods. And so our methods, we need a set command stack. Takes in a command stack, a grid command array. So there we go. That solves that issue. Current command is a computed. So we're going to have to add our computed on here. Computed. And we take a look at our current command. It's a computed that just returns a command, a grid command. So we can just say current command. Yep, is a grid command. What are we getting? So computed current command stack, that is not assignable to that. Must be doing my computeds wrong. I need that and that. So that works. Must be doing my computeds wrong. Oh, it's signals. Okay. If we put that back, where did I put that file? Solver. So if we put that back, these are signals. So you're a signal, a grid command. And you are a signal of number. But I don't think we actually even need that one. Are we using command stack length? We'll add it if we need it. I think that just came across from. So we need the undo function. So that's fine. In our methods, we can just add our undo, which is a void function. And I think at the very bottom, we just need date cell value. Yeah, we're just using update cell value. So we can also add in our update cell value. And value is that. And I believe that is our feature. So there's our solver feature. And sometimes these types can take a little bit of work. And if you guys are interested, I do have like a couple of helper methods that I'll often create that will create types that make this a little bit easier. So they can analyze other features and say, hey, I need this stuff from those features. I tend to be a little bit less, I tend to do that a little bit less because I like to keep what this can accept down to only what it needs. Because then I'm more explicit in my needs, and that helps in the future when things move around or refactors or stuff like that. It helps me catch potential areas where things are missed. Where if you do things automatically, sometimes missing those things happens. So I am a little bit more explicit about things like this. Like I will use, states that I've set up before. But really, I could go even more granular than that if I wanted. Um, but with my computeds and my methods, I often just add them because I only want those methods. And if something changes, then I'll catch it in compile time or things like that, right? Because it's possible for like this signal or this to change. And maybe I don't recompile for whatever reason and get a runtime error or who knows what, right? So um, I like to be a little bit more explicit. So that's our solver feature. Um, is this a decent time to nerd snipe you for something you said you would pick up next stream? Go ahead, please do. Um, absolutely. If I said I was going to do something, you should definitely remind me of it. Let's go ahead and commit this because yeah, we're at a good place. Um, the button linting. I said I had to add button types to a big project and a lint rule helped and you had a story. Button linting. I had to add button types to a big project and a lint rule helped. Are you talking about what lint rule are you talking about? Um, I'm trying to think about where my brain was last week, right? The angular lint rule that buttons must. Oh, yeah. Okay. Um, that rule is interesting. Because in a template, and let's find a template here, right? Let's go take a look at this button, right? So we've got a type equals button here, right? If I remove this, and it's probably going to hate it because I can't do inline comments like that, right? Do you guys know, with no type on the button, do you guys know what the type of a button is? Um, do you guys the the answer? Well, I won't take the answer away from you, right? Yeah, default is submit. Exactly, wise man Z. Yep. So the story is, um, buttons having types can be helpful, right? And like the type equals button outside of a form should obviously be a button, but you can't, right? The HTML can't make that assumption because this could be a fragment that's included in a form. You never know. You never know, where the HTML that you're trying to figure out lives, right? And so making those assumptions often doesn't work. And I'm curious. Oh, yeah, that is true. Cell value changed does not exist. We're gonna have to clean up some stuff. So when you're creating a design system, you need to be very, very careful about make sure that you understand what the HTML specification is, right? And we were more explicit with ng submit, and we had helper buttons like, yep, submitting forms, yep. Yeah, exactly, right? You were saving stuff because you were trying to open dialogues. And I've had the exact opposite happen with different design systems, where they create a design system, but they default your button to adding type equals button, right? And to show that, what we could do is we could add oh, I'm drawing a blank right now because I'm thinking about 10 things, right? A directive. We can add a directive, right? And let's go ahead and import that, right? In this directive, we could make the selector like Sudoku button, right? And then what we could do is we could also add to the host an attribute, right? So here we could do attribute dot button, or attribute dot type equals button, right? So what we've done with our directive is anybody who adds Sudoku button automatically gets this button type for free, right? Yeah. YouTube batch that. Oh man. Um, that's not good. Let me check out my YouTube stuff. I'm curious about why it batched it. And thank you, Augustine DS, for the follow. Or subscribing on YouTube. Thank you for that. If I do this, I'm actually breaking the HTML contract. And the reason for that is let's say, I also want to add class, my awesome Sudoku button, right? And I decide I love that button. And so I'm going to add this Sudoku button everywhere. And not only that, I'm going to tell my entire team to use it. But hey, guess what? I've got a surprise. Anybody who's used a button in a form and is expecting the default behavior of a submit is going to be surprised, because now my Sudoku button changes every button that it's used on into a type button. So now when you click submit in your forms, you're no longer submitting. Um, that becomes who put that one in there? Oh, I think that one came from YouTube. Oh, that's Michael. Yeah. Unlike Disney, breaking the HTML contract doesn't mean you can't sue for wrongful death. I have to be careful what I say there. But that's pretty funny. Um, hey, I'm doing great, Augustine. A couple days off from work and just being able to reset and be able to think about some things and just spend time with the family has been great. Thank you for asking. Augustine Diaz from YouTube. Yeah, yeah. Um, thank you for showing up. Um, it has been a good while, and thank you. Um, but be very, very careful about this. And this is kind of where my brain has been quite a bit. Um, is directives are a powerful thing in Angular, right? Because I could come in here and now I could just go, or I could go sudo dash button, right? Um, and I could take this out, right? And now we're in a good place because right now all of my buttons are type button and I think I'm doing amazing. But what I've really done is I've changed the HTML contract. Um, be very, very careful about doing stuff like this, right? And there are a bunch of different ways to do this. And there are a bunch of different things that you could do, um, that could cause problems, right? Other things we could do, right? We need to export the class, that, right? But another thing I could do is I could come in here and I could say, hey, on every click, um, I could, have my on click event, right? Um, and down in here, I could add an on click event, right? And, I could do something really cool here, and then I could return false, which basically tells the um, oh, I guess I don't have a template, so I don't know the variable here, right? But I could do something really, really cool that I think I'm doing, and then right. But because in most cases I want it to handle a certain way, then my on-click event does something weird, and who knows, right? There are a whole bunch of ways that you can mess up the HTML contract, and you need to be very careful about that. Like in your own personal code, who cares, right? If you want to live on the wild side and on the edge, that's fine. But as soon as you start bringing more people into your project, um, it becomes more and more dangerous to do things like this. I'm not saying that adding a click event is a bad idea. What I am saying is subverting the HTML contract is a bad idea, right? Because returning false from a button, I think it prevents the event bubbling, which you may or may not want to do. And the other thing we could do, right, is we could turn this back to a void, but we could say, hey, we want an event that is an HTML mouse event, right? We want the mouse event here. And, we could just add event.prevent default, right? And great, this works for everywhere where we're adding it, but maybe somebody wants our event to bubble. Um, yeah. Um, oh, the host attribute, Augustine. The host attribute is something that's really cool. We were actually advised against using it for a long time, but then Material discovered just how useful it was. But what this host attribute does is it's kind of like a pseudo selector to the host that this is added to, right? So if I add sudo-button here, right? The host refers to the button. So this host class allows me to add bindings. So I'm adding an attribute binding to my host of type equals button. So that's the same as me adding this, right? The host can do it for me. Or if I want to add a class to my button, right? I can just add the class, or my click event adds it to the button itself. Yeah. Yep. It's the same as host binding. Making the error types for host better. And Jeremy mentioned in the style RFC that they want to make typing better. Right. Yeah. And this is a really powerful thing to do. However, and I want to be clear about this, and maybe it's been changed. I haven't, this is something that we've been asking them for, but let's go to style guide. Man, that doesn't look good with the browser settings I have. Let's see. Let's turn it off here. There we go. So Angular's doing some stuff that doesn't look good, but they automatically respect a dark site, so I don't have to force it on them. But if we look in here, let's look at host binding. So host listener, host binding decorators versus host metadata, right? Consider preferring host listener and host binding to the host property on the directive and component decorators, but be consistent in your choice. This is outdated information. The actual preferred way to go is to use the host metadata. So here you can see that they're saying this is what you should do, but this is what we just did, right? There was good reason for this, and they have good reasoning here. But if you decide to bring this up, yeah, they're working on a new version of the style guide, and Michael's talking about that, right? Jeremy in the style RFC, they're working on it for sure. Yeah, exactly. If you go to the component, that was, if you go to the component, they say the exact opposite. And in the GDE chat, there's a couple places where people are pointing out, hey, in the style guide, you say this. And the problem that we have is here I am on stream, and I'm recommending that you guys do this, right? And then you go to work and you're like, hey, we should start using the host, the host property in our directives or our components. And somebody goes into the Angular style guide and they beat you over the head with, no, you're not supposed to do that. If we want to do that, then blah, 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 right? They're wrong, right? The style guide is old, it's outdated. But because it is something that's on the official Angular site, it's in the style guide. The number of times I've had to go, like, I get people that beat me over the head with the style guide all the time. And the number of times that I've had to go and find something on Twitter or find something in the Angular blog or find something somewhere else where they said, yeah, the style guide's wrong, right? And then we can move past the, oh, you're wrong, right? The style guide says this. So be very, very careful. Be aware that if you try to introduce this, at work or wherever else, somebody will probably come to you and be like, no, the style guide says don't do this, right? They're wrong. Angular material has been doing this forever. That's where we learned that this is probably the better way to do it. And with signals, this becomes even more important. Um, so, yeah, I just want to give you that heads up if you're going to go do this. But more than anything, be very careful about um, subverting like the HTML, right? One thing we could do is we could say, hey, this is we could add the type to it, right? And now we're being explicit in what we expect our, and I think it wants me to do this, right? So now we're being explicit saying that, hey, this is a type button or something like that, right? Where now having this type in here is explicit, right? And we could even go so far as to say, hey, we've got our cool handler on this too, right? Um, the other thing, you could do is you could have a directive, um, and this could be our export class suit button, right? Um, and inside of here, you could have your selector of that, and we'll just take this part out, right? Um, so here's our Sudoku button class. I don't know what it doesn't like about this. Oh, so we need a directive on it, right? That's our linting rules. I actually don't like that as much. I prefer, well, the class can be called directive. Don't put directive in the selector. Um, so now we've got, something that we could add everywhere. So we could come down here and we could, add our Sudoku button, and that's cool. But then we could also add in another directive. Um, and this one could be, export class. And here, this could be sudo button cool handler directive, right? Um, and here, we add this in, and we don't need the class either, but now we've got our on click event, and then inside of here, we've got our on click. So there we go. I think it's not picking this up for whatever reason. Not sure why. But so now we've got that, right? And then oh, and I put this in between the other one. So let's move this up here, right? And no, that's wrong. Wait, what did I do here? Why did I do this? So there's that. There's the Sudoku button. There's the cool handler. And now I've got two cool handlers. There we go. Right. And so we've got, oh no, that's not what I wanted. What am I doing here? Well, we can go this route, right? And then, to get this to work, we have to do the suit button cool handler, right? And then Um, you know, if we wanted to add the type attribute to it, also we would have another, another directive. But with, I think it was 16 maybe, um, we can now export class. We can go sudo type button direct tool handler directive, right? And there's that. But now the other thing we can do is we can have our Sudoku here, right? We can set our attribute type to button. Um, but the other thing we can do is we can add host directives here. And we can say, hey, you also include Sudoku button directive, and you also include Sudoku cool handler directive, right? And so now this directive right here adds the type button, but it will also add the class, and it will also add our on-click handler. And we can come down here and just replace, what would have to be 3. We can just say, hey, no, we just want the sudo type button cool handler, right? And so now we've composed 3 directives into 1 directive. Yeah, host directives, exactly, Wiseman Z. Um, and the only thing I want you guys to be careful of when you're doing something like this, right? Um, is they call this out in the host directives on the site. So if we go take a look at host directive, um, so oh, maybe they don't call it out anymore. Um, yeah, Armin does have really, yeah, you guys should check out Armin too. Um, Great library, Angular primitives, where there is used in a large amount, and usually I take inspiration. I haven't taken a look at Angular primitives. Let's go take a look at Angular primitives. Um, but one of the things that they call out is the hidden cost of doing this, of host directives, right? And there is a hidden cost, right? Um, this one directive actually instantiates 3 directives, right? Because it's got 2 other directives here. And that can add hidden weight to your page, right? If there's only 1 or 2 usages on a page, that's one thing. But think about, maybe you have 100 buttons on a page, right? Or there's that famous browser stress test or framework stress test of 1,000,000 buttons, right? 1,000,000 clickable buttons in a framework, and thinking about what that means and how that works. Well, if you're using directive composition, 1,000,000 clickable 1,000,000 clickable buttons actually means 3,000,000 directives, right? So it's a linear progression, and it's just something to be aware of. It's not something that you'll typically run into, but if you've got huge forms or whatever, make sure that you're careful about your your directives, right? You just be careful about composition and things like that. My suggestion is you should never have 1,000,000 clickable buttons on a page. Um, if you ever get to that point, and you're not stress testing a browser, um, then I would suggest that it's time to think about, what you're doing that requires that many components on a page, because quite often, I don't know, there are data entry cases, right? And this is one of the things that, like, if you bring me in on a project that's an existing data entry project, and you tell me that we're redesigning the form, I'm going to fight you. And the reason is, people have muscle memory, and people will create macros. They'll, the they're so used to hitting tab a certain number of times. They're so used to hitting enter in a certain place. They're so used to, you know, creating, maybe they've got macros or things like that that do things for them, where they can type something, hit the macro, and it fills out a whole bunch of stuff. The second you mess with that, you've destroyed the productivity of, maybe an entire call center, maybe an entire data entry location. So in those cases, those are the cases where, if you've got like hundreds of things on a form, and people are like, oh, we're going to modernize this to Angular and we're going to blah, blah, blah. Don't, right? It stays how it is. It's that way forever. You've got people with muscle memory. You break that muscle memory, you're probably going to lose people. Do not mess with data entry forms. Other forms, you know, be smart about it. But data entry forms that have been around forever, do not mess with them. It does need to be standalone. I wasn't marking those as standalone either. You're right, Michael. And it didn't complain because I'm on Angular 19, and by default we're on standalone. I was just thinking about that too. I was like, why didn't it catch me for the standalone? It's because we're default standalone now, because we're in Angular 19 here. Angular primitives. That's where I was going to go. I want to take a look at Angular primitives. Thank you for the suggestion on this one, Wise Menzi. So Angular primitives. This looks like one. Ooh, not good. So we're gonna get a little bit of weirdness just because it wasn't designed to be dark mode, but so accessibility, versioning. Oh, how did I not know about this? How did I not know about this? Thank you for sharing this. Man, I'm going to immediately be sharing this with people on my team. This is amazing. Same author as NG icons. I love NG icons. I love that right here we've got, man, these are nice. See, and I love this. If you create a button component and I have to do your button and then wrap content, I'm not gonna like it as much as if I just add a directive. I already love this. So like the checkbox, yep, exactly what I expected to see. Oh, they've got a date picker. Oh, that's nice. Very nice. Huh. Oh, they've even got interactions. I wonder what's supposed to happen here. If I turn off this, sorry about the light. Can I not focus that? I can't focus that. It's preventing me from focus. That's what I'm seeing. That's very cool. Very cool. Um, Other interactions. Oh, those are nice. Oh, autofill is like the bane of my existence, you guys. All the components are directives. That's awesome. Like, if I could just give, if I could just give people an easy way to turn off autofill, oh man, that's very cool. Very cool. There's so many good things here. Yeah, data adapters are nice. Focus traps. Um, this is a cool library. Yeah, headless tables. Uh, yeah, autofill is a pain for all of us. Exactly. I hear you there, Augustine. Technically speaking, at ngconf, Alex said that all components are directives deep down. Yeah, that is true. Um, all components eventually wind up being directives, but there's a big difference between doing an at component and creating a button component. And we can take a look at this too, right? You guys snipe me good. Um, but if I do at directive, right? Um, and here we just do selector. Um, we'll do sued button, right? And then all I do is I just do a host, and we just add a class, and my class is, yeah, my Sudoku button, right? And then I just export that. That is the simplest directive to add a Sudoku button to all of my buttons, right? Um, and that's a nice way to set up your projects right now. Like if you want to go do that, and then you want to create a .sudoku button class that's global, this will apply everywhere, right? And then you could even, add an outline button or things like that. And um, I do that all the time because it's just a nice way to work with stuff, right? Being able to just do button um, like Sudoku button, right? And so then that applies all of my styling to my button, and I get a whole bunch of nice stuff with it, right? Um, that is a very nice way to work with buttons. If you come at it from the other direction, right? Um, we export class sued button component, right? Um, and inside of here, yeah, we'll do that. Um, and we're not going to do this. Instead, we're going to add our class equals sued dash button, right? And then we've got our ng content in here, right? And then it's added stuff that it doesn't need to add. But now we've got this button, right? But and for the most part, it's okay, right? So if I come here and I add, my sued dash button, um, and why doesn't it like that? It's definitely, oh, it needs to be imported here, right? Now it understands it. Like, wait, what? No, right? And then, here's my click me. Um, let's compare these, right? So let's add a button and click me, right? And let's add just the sued button to it, right? So for all intents and purposes, right now, these are very similar, right? Um, they've both added a button to the form. They've both, um, they've both done some things to the form. That's fine. There's a problem here, though, and the problem is the way this is rendered is this is actually rendered as a sued dash button, the slash sued dash button. And then inside of here, we get the button, right? Um, so that's how this is rendered. So already we've got an issue because let's say we want to add to this component, in our in our styles. Let's say we want to add a style like, let's say in our host pseudo selector, we want to add style that says, you know what, all button children need a margin left of 20 pixels, right? Well, guess what? This immediately works on this code right here, right? It doesn't work on this code, right? Um, and so then you have to come up into here and now you have to say, you know what, I want styles. And my styles are going to say that, on my host, I want a display of contents, right? Great. I fixed this, right? But anybody who, well, this fixes it for everybody, but there are downsides to this too, right? But it gets worse, right? Let's say I want to disable I don't know, right? We'll just pick something, right? Reset grid. Who cares, right? I'm done with my button. I've disabled it. Whenever this value is true, it's disabled. Here, if I want to add disabled, um, oh man, right? Oh, I'm binding to it wrong, right? So with the button, I'm done, right? Um, whenever reset grid is true, and this is a bad example because, um, reset grid always returns void, but, for whatever, for right now, we'll just pretend that this is that this is a signal that returns true or false, right? Um, we've got a problem here. We could actually go with like game one, right? Or something like that, right? I don't know. We'll put it back to what can we do here? I don't know. Reset grid's good enough, right? We can just pretend that this is a signal. We've got a problem here with sudo button, right? Because now, oh man, now they want to disable the button. So what do? We come in here. We go disabled equals input disabled false. And actually, we don't even need the disabled on it, right? So there we go. Now we've got disabled as an input, but it's not actually disabling the button. No, now we have to come in here and we have to go disabled equals disabled, right? And now we've got a button that can be disabled, right? Reset grid, well, I guess we've got better type safety because it's catching reset grid, because technically the HTML spec says that we can set it to anything. So it's not checking it. And right, this becomes ugly because as we want to add more things to the button here, like say we want to extend the class, right? We can just say, hey, class equals red background, right? Great, we're done, right? Here, if I want to add class equals red background, well, class actually refers to sudo-button, right? So in a lot of cases, that's probably good. But you know what? Let's go with red outline, right? And red outline here, because we want the button to have a red outline. We don't want the this to have the red outline. So we're in a weird place here, where we've added a class here, and it's kind of ugly. But if we want this to happen, usually what happens in this case is you wind up with class spelled with like a K or something like that, right? And then up here, you have class equals input, and maybe there's nothing. But we've also got a class on the button of Sudoku button, right? And with the directive, this was automatically merged for us. We didn't have to worry about Sudoku button being there and this being there. Angular handles merging all of that. We're in a good place. We've got another mess. So now we have to have, the protected real class, right? And that's going to be a computed. And yep, and there we go. So now we've got our protected real class that we can now bind here to this button, right? And it just gets real messy, real fast. And you spend a whole bunch of time copying functionality that an HTML button has, right? So I'm not a big fan of things like this, right? Components. And look at how much code this component is. and it's just going to keep growing, right? To keep in. Um, Thank you so much, Augustine. I appreciate that. You had hope for this library in Spartan. Spartan's doing okay. Um, Analog is doing really well. I hope as analog adoption picks up, Spartan adoption will pick up. Um, but just be very thoughtful about the developer experience, right? Um, when you're um, and this needs to be, oh, that should be fine. It's my equal sign here, right? Um, no, the equal sign is fine. I'm not sure what it's, oh, it wants a semicolon here, right? Is that what it wants? No, it wants that, and then my semicolon. But just be very, very thoughtful about the developer experience as you're working through this, because the other thing is like, it's unlikely to happen, right? But let's pretend that for some reason the HTML button spec changes, right? For whatever reason. Um, it could break your Sudoku button in who knows how many ways, right? Um, but if you're just if you're augmenting the button using directives, um, you're better you're better positioned to handle that, right? Because the breaking change may break stuff like this that you're calculating, or maybe you've got handlers or things that are handling special situations. Like usually the breaking changes break JavaScript. They very rarely break markup, right? And so that's one of the things, that just be very, very careful about, and very, very intentional about how, when you're building stuff for people, right? Other developers. And when you're doing things on a team at work, you are building things for other developers, right? There will be somebody who comes along and works with your code later. So when you're building things for other developers, be very intentional about your developer experience, right? This experience, and I'm cherry picking examples, right? But this experience is often superior to this experience, right? There are times where this makes sense. But I find that they're usually the exception. And when somebody wants to do something like this, I prefer that they explain to me why creating a component is superior to creating a directive. And I even go so far as like on inputs, right? We could have a sued input, right? And that is often a superior experience to creating an input. This is the case where people have successfully argued, like maybe a type ahead or maybe a date picker or something like that. But we can see from this example that a date picker is very possible to do with just directives, right? And material goes very much the same way, right? I picked up this preference from doing a lot of work with material, and then over the past year and a half since I was introduced to Daisy UI. This is my preferred way of going about things, because Daisy UI is just CSS. So if I want to use Daisy UI, I just create directives that add the CSS that I need. So I very rarely agree with this. And it gets worse, right? Like if we create an input here, um, then we have to create a control value accessor, and we have to do all sorts of other things just to make our new component input work. And that's where a lot of my argument comes in against input components is just the sheer amount of work, because you're not only are you doing all of this stuff, but you're also creating control value accessors, and there's a whole bunch of ways to mess those up. Whereas if I just add a directive, Angular's already written the control value accessor for the default input. Um, so be intentional, be careful. Um, but Michael, you're definitely taking that title for best sniper. That was a good snipe, and you didn't even ask about this. I just got off on a tangent because of your amazing snipe. Um, so thank you for that. Um, that was premeditated, but you told me exactly. I did, and I wish I remembered the exact circumstances for it. Um, because I'm sure I had another story. Like that's the thing, right? You can tell, from my gray hair and my gray beard because I haven't shaved all vacation. Um, I've been doing this for a long time. I started my first professional programming job was in 1998. Um, so well, technically it was before that. I was still in high school when I accepted a job for the city that I lived in to update some database stuff, but I don't really consider that because I spent time seeking more help than I actually did help. So, but 1998 was when I actually started writing code that went into production and that some of my code people to this day are still using. In fact, if you take surveys online, it's highly likely that some of my code you're using, because there aren't very many survey companies, and the big survey company bought up the company that I worked for back then. And you know, every once in a while, whenever I get a survey, I go check the code, and yep, my code's still there. So yeah, I've got tons of stories. I wish I could remember what it was for, but most of the stuff that I explained to you guys, I've learned through pain. And so I'm hoping to help you avoid the pain. Like sometimes pain is very, very important and good. Um, and what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes we just don't learn until we've experienced some pain for ourselves, right? Um, Sometimes people are very, very good at understanding the danger or who knows what. And a good explanation of this is I have, two daughters, and one daughter we can say, hey, don't do this. And she's like, okay, that's fine. The other daughter, we can say, hey, don't do this. And she's going to go try and do it, right? She's got a very curious mindset, which is awesome. But as parents, it's terrifying, right? Don't touch the stove, it's hot. Oh, I touched the stove and now I'm crying because, I touched something that's hot, even though mom and dad told me that it's hot, right? She hasn't seriously injured herself that way yet, but and as she gets older, she's a little bit smarter. But one story I like to tell about her is the very first time she went camping with her grandparents without mom and dad there. Um, we recognized there were going to be a lot of cousins. There was going to be a lot for grandma and grandpa to watch out for. We wanted to talk to our daughters, right? Um, and they were going camping in an area that had a lot of snakes, rattlesnakes in particular. And we just heard reports that the restrooms in the area where they were camping, they were finding rattlesnakes in the corner, curled up behind the garbage cans and stuff like that. They'd go in there and seek warmth during the night. Um, And most people, you know, in the evening or in the morning, they right whatever, and that's when they're most likely to have snakes in there because snakes are avoiding the cool. Um, so we were talking to our daughters as we were driving them out to go camping with grandma and grandpa, and we're like, "What do you do if you see a snake on the ground?" And my oldest is like, "Oh, you don't touch that, Dad. You don't ever touch a snake." I was like, "Good." And my youngest is like, "Well, Dad, I would go over and pick it up and pet it on its head to see if it's nice." Like, please don't do that, sweetie. Do not touch the snake. Um, and we had to talk to them about snakes, and it's not even just coming close to a snake, but a lot of rattlesnakes can strike up to close to their body length, right? When they curl their head back into that S position, the length of that S position is how far that snake can strike. And so we're talking to them about, if you go grab a stick that you can walk around with, if you can touch that snake with the stick, you're too close to the snake. And we had to talk to them about that and the danger, right? But that's just her curious mind, right? Which is she looks at the world in a very different way, and it's amazing to see the world through her eyes. But it's also terrifying in the fact that, right? Oh, I would just go pick it up and pet it on its head, Dad. And she's cupping her hands like this to show us, that this is how she would gently pick up the snake. And like, oh, sweetie, no, please don't. So, um, you know, I don't even know how we got on that topic. I was trying to tie it back into programming. I don't even know how I got there. Um, so classic kid. She's she's her older sister was never that way, right? Um, her older sister was always very cautious, always very careful to listen to what mom and dad said and things like that. And to this day, she is definitely the more cautious, more reserved. Um, I hate to say more responsible, but that's a good description of her. Like, we can ask her to do something and we know it's going to get done. Um, her younger sister definitely struggles in all those areas that I explained, but um, she excels in technology. She excels in art. She excels in um, like anything that requires any bit of creativity. My youngest, it's amazing. Like some of the art projects she brings home, I'm just like, we could take this to a gallery and sell it. Um, so it's interesting, right? Same parents. We tried to raise them the same way, but if you have kids, you'll realize that's literally impossible. Kids are just so different. But yeah. Um, where are we? Sniped. That's where we are. We got sniped. Um, oh, let's see. We, I think, oh, we're ready to end. That's where we are. I was looking to see how much time we had because I wanted to get in and just finish up. Um, I wanted to finish up the old. Really, all we've got left to do now is the keyboard navigation. Um, so just our keyboard navigation is all that's left to do, and we're done. Um, this week should be pretty good. So Tuesday we'll do keyboard navigation, and then we'll be done with that. Then we'll be fixing up the game, and then we're going to start getting into xState because one of the things that I really think framework and UI devs particularly can benefit from is thinking about UI as state machines. And xState makes that very explicit, but we can do a lot of that without xState. So I want to talk a bit about how um, I'm viewing modern UIs more and more like state machines. And that's simplifying a lot of what we do on our teams. And I want to share some of those learnings with you guys. So we'll get into that. Tuesday and Thursday, I don't have anything going on. Granted, last week I didn't think I would have anything going on Tuesday, and then my parents showed up. But it's just that time of year where my plans change last minute, just because it's the time of year in the U.S. where we're all about family, um, which is a hilarious statement to say out loud, right? We should be about family all the time, but no, this time of year it's very much, family will just show up and things like that. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the discussion and the questions. And Augustine, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that too. I'm glad that you found enough value to want to share. And that's a huge compliment to me. I try to keep my ads as low as possible. I try to keep my content as free as possible, because my goal is to help everybody just become better. So thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you next time.